गिरधरधारी जय गोपी जनवल्लभा गिरधरधारी यशोदानन्दना भज जननन्दना यशोदानन्दना भज जननन्दना यमुनतीर्थावनचारि यमुनतीर्थावनचारि जय राधा माधव कुंज विहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज विहारी गोपी जन वल्लभा गिरधरधारी गोपी जन वल्लभा गिरधरधारी यशोदानन्दना भज जननन्दना यशोदानन्दना भज जननन्दना जमुनातीर्थवनचारि यमुनातीर्थवनचारि हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे जय राधा माधव राधा माधव राधा जय राधा गिर हरि राधा गिर हरि राधा जय जगन्नाथ जय जगन्नाथ जय देव जय सुदामा जय गौधनिताय 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 जय गौधनिताय जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद जय जय गुरुदेव 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 जय जय गुरुदेव Hi. Namo Vishnu Krishna Krishna Smriti Namani Namam Saniksha Prabhat Priyata Shuddha Shuddha Nishmanta Savakkanavad Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishna Bhutta Shuddha Bhakti Vedanta Swamaniti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pujani Nirvishesha Shuddhavadi Pashtata Dashnavani Hare Krishna. So first I'll Hare Krishna. We'll just share the screen.
Hare Krishna beta.
Hare Krishna. Everybody can see my screen?
Yes, Mataji.
Yeah, thank you. So anybody would like to read Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita?
Hare Krishna Mataji, I could read.
Yeah, thank you,
Thank you.
Mataji.
It was 7 a.m. Srila Prabhupada sat on his dais in the temple. Beside him on an altar stood the recently acquired statue of Krishna. The child Krishna stood 2 feet high with his left hand on his hip, his right hand holding a rod. Gurudas had found him at an import store and had begged the manager to sell him. After several visits, the man had agreed for $35. Prabhupada had given him the name Karta Mahashay, the boss. This morning, as Prabhupada and Karta Mahashay looked out at the devotees in the room, only about 6 people were present. The night before, the temple had been crowded. Where are the others? Prabhupada asked. And then he gave the answer himself. They are sleeping. All the sleeping is not good. He took out his kartals and began playing the 1, 2, 3 rhythm. Mukunda took up a mridanga and played along, trying to execute the rhythms Srila Prabhupada had recently taught him. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai. Thank you so much, Mataji.
Thank you.
So now we go to Srimad Bhagavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jaya Udiret Nashtaprayashu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavat Sevaya Bhagavate Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. So reading from Canto 4, chapter 29, text 75. Anena purusho dehan upadate vimunchati harsham shokham bhayam dukkham sukham chanena vindati. Anena purusho dehan upadate vimunchati harsham shokham bhayam dukkham sukham chanena vindati. Anena purusho dehan upadate vimunchati harsham shokham bhayam dukkham sukham chanena vindati. Anybody would like to recite the verse?
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandot
Hare Krishna
Pranam.
Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam.
Arena Purusha Dehan Upadate Vimunchati Harsham Shokam Bhayam Dukkam Shukam Chanena Bindati. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu. Anybody else?
Hare Krishna Mataji, I am also doing.
Thank you. Thank you, Prabhu.
Anena purusho dehan upadatte vimunchati harsham shokam bhayam dukkham sukham chanena bindati.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Anybody
Krishna
else?
Mataji.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Aneno purusho dehan upadate vimunchati harsham shokam bhayam dukkham sukham chanena bindati. Hare
Thank you so
Krishna.
much, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Anena purusho dehan upadate vimunchati harsham shokam bhayam dukkham sukham chanena bindati. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So anybody else would like to?
Hare Krishna Beta, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam. Mataji.
अनेन पुरुषो देहान् उपादते विमुञ्चति हर्षं शोकं भयं दुःखं सुखं चानेन विन्दति.
Thank you so much, Mataji. So we'll go to synonyms. Anena, by this process. Purusha, the living entity. Dehan, gross bodies. Upadate, achieves. Vimunchati, gives up. Harsham, enjoyment. Shokam, lamentation. Bhayam, fear. Dukham, unhappiness. Sukham, happiness. Cha, also. Anena, excuse me. By the gross body. Vindati, enjoys. Translation and Purport by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So translation, by virtue of the processes of the subtle body, the living entity develops and gives up gross bodies. This is known as transmigration of the soul. Thus the soul becomes subjected to different types of so-called enjoyment, lamentation, fear, happiness, and and happiness. Anybody would like to read the purport?
Hare Krishna. Ji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Purport by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. According to this explanation, one can clearly understand that originally the living entity was as good as the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his pure spiritual existence. However, the mind becomes polluted by the desires for sense gratification in the material world. The living entity drops into the material condition as explained in this verse. Thus, he begins his material existence, which means that he transmigrates from one body to another and becomes more and more entangled in the material existence. The process of Krishna consciousness, by which one always thinks of Krishna, is the transcendental process by which one can revert to his original spiritual existence. Devotional service means always thinking of Krishna. Manmana Manmana bhava mad bhakta madhyaji mam namaskuru. Mam evisyashi shaktam te pratijane priyo ashi me. Always think of me and become my devotee. Worship me and offer your homage unto me. Thus you will come to me without fail. I promise you this because you are my very dear friend. Bhagavad Gita 1865. One should always engage in the Lord's devotional service. As recommended in the Archana Marg, one should worship the deity in the temple and constantly offer obeisances to the spiritual master and the deity. These processes are recommended to one who actually wants to become free from the material entanglement. Modern psychologists can study the action of the mind, thinking, feeling, and willing, but they are unable to go deep into the matter. This is due to their lack of knowledge and to their not being associated with a liberated acharya. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 4.2, Evam parampara praptam evam rajoshayo vidu sakalena mata yoga nasta parantapa. The supreme science was thus received to the chain of disciplic succession, and the saintly king understood it in that way. But in course of time, the succession was broken, and therefore the science as it appears to be lost. Guided by the so-called psychologists and philosophers, people in the modern age do not know the activities of the subtle body and thus cannot understand what is meant by the transmigration of the soul. In this matter, we have to take the authorized statement of Bhagavad Gita 2.13. Dehinasmin yata dehi komaram jovanam jara tata dhyantar prapti dhirastatra na muyati. As the embodied soul continually passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. The self-realized soul is not bewildered by such a change unless all human society understands this important verse in Bhagavad Gita. Civilization will advance in ignorance, not in knowledge. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Om Agyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shlakaya Chakshurumilitam Yena Tasme Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutare Shimtabir Krishna Goswami Namane Namo Om Sanikshaya Prabhupada Priya Yate Shuddhi Shuddhi Nishvanta Savakyanavadine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutare Shimata Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharani Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyata Deshatarani. So I'm also seeking the blessings of all the Vaishnavas assembled here. So please bless me. Vancha kalpatru bhesha kripa sindhu bhai evacha patitanama pavanibhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. So in the beginning of the purport, Srila Prabhupada says that one can clearly understand that originally the living entity was as good as the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his pure spiritual existence. However, when the mind becomes polluted by desires for sense gratification in the material world, the living entity drops into the material condition, as explained in this verse. So what is the reason for falling into this material world? Is it Krishna's fault that we fell from the spiritual world? Srila Prabhupada very beautifully explains this in a conversation from a morning walk. Hridayananda says that, but if I say that, if I am originally in the spiritual world, but even the potential to fall down is an imperfection in the creation. So he's saying that falling down from the spiritual world is an imperfection creation. So in a way, he's like, we are like blaming Krishna. So Prabhupada says that why you should dictate God? God has created perfectly. He has given you independence. You fall down, it is your fault. God has made you perfect, given you independence. But if you misuse your independence, you fall down. Just like government gives everyone opportunity, why do you become criminal and go to jail? That is your fault. Then Hridayananda says that they say that God should have created us so that we so he's still trying to say that this creation is imperfect. And then again, Srila Prabhupada says, why should have created? He created already perfect. Because you are perfect, therefore you have got the independence to misuse. You are not a dead stone. That is perfection. Ye yatha mam prapadyante. Bhagavad Gita 4.11. You can go anywhere, Sarvaga. You can go to the Vaikuntha, Yanti Deva Vrita Devan, Bhagavad Gita 9.25. You can go to the higher planets. You can go to the hell. When you go to the hell, it is your choice. God has given you all perfection. Purnam idam, purnam ada, purnam, purnam, purnat purnam udachyate from Ishopanishad. And then again, Srila Prabhupada continues, everything is complete, perfect, and because you are perfect, you have got the independence. But misusing the independence, you are imperfect. Again, reviving your independence, you can become perfect, although you are imperfect now. That is Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness movement means raising the imperfect to the perfect platform. That is Krishna consciousness. Other fools, they say, we are perfect now. In a fallen condition also, they are thinking perfect. That is Maya. Asurim, Rakshasim, Chaiva, Mohinim, Prakritim, Shrita. Bhagavad Gita 9.12. Krishna has made you perfect. There is no doubt about it. Just like some of our students, all of a sudden, they deviate, go away. So, what is that? Our movement is imperfect or he is imperfect? Then Hridayananda says that he is imperfect. He is imperfect, Prabhupada says. Our movement is perfect, but he becomes imperfect by his misuse of independence. He thinks that this is nice and goes to hell. What can be done? That independence is there. That is perfectness. So this conversation is from Morning Walk, December 6, 1973. And in this relation, there is a verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila 20.117. Krishna bhuli se jiva anadi bahirmukha, ateva maya tare deya samsara dukha. Forgetting Krishna, the living entity has been attracted by the external feature from time immemorial. Therefore, the illusory energy, Maya, gives him all kinds of misery in his material existence. Because we turned our face away from Krishna, that is why we are suffering in this material world. So we are to blame for the choices we made. Actually, when Krishna loves us so much that he gives us the free will, whether we are in the spiritual world or whether we are in the material world. And it is us that we make the choice. And because of that choice, we suffer or we stay with Krishna in the spiritual world. And there's another question comes to mind is that if we go back to the spiritual world, can there be a risk of coming back to this material world to suffer again? So the answer to this question is that the independence is always there. But the acharyas explain that once bitten, twice shy. There's a saying. So generally, we won't make that mistake again because we have suffered so much in this material world that we wouldn't want to go back to the material world because it's like a bad dream. And this material existence is compared to a dream. In the following few verses, we'll come to know that this material creation is the spirit soul's dream. When the spirit soul wants to imitate the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is put into this dreamland of material creation. After being in contact with the material modes of nature, the living entity develops the subtle and the gross bodies. This is from Srimad Bhagavatam 4.29.83. And then going back to the translation of this verse, by the virtue of the process of the subtle body, the living entity develops and gives up gross bodies. So this is known as transmigration of the soul. And this subtle body, let's see what this subtle body is all about. The subtle body is the covering of the mind, intelligence, false ego, and contaminated consciousness. We understand in Bhagavad Gita, mostly Prabhupada discusses the three elements, which is just mind, intelligence, and false ego. But in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, the fourth element is discussed, the contaminated consciousness. And all the elements of the subtle body is material. And when we fall into this material existence, one comes under the influence of the modes of material nature. And here Srila Prabhupada says that we have acquired so many material nature by association of the three modes of material nature. Sattva guna, Rajo guna, Tamo guna. So our habits are formed on account of our association with the three different qualities of material nature. And further, he says that there are different types of bodies. From species point of view, there are 8.4 million forms, and they are due to these material modes of nature. I have several times explained there are three modes of material nature, and if you mix 3 into 3, it becomes 9, and 9 into 9 is equal to 81. So little more or less, there are 8.4 million species of life. So this lecture from Srimad Bhagavatam, 1.5.28, August 9, 1974 in Vrindavan. So this 3 into 3, 9 into 9, 81, and then we keep on multiplying. This is actually the three modes of material nature. It is being multiplied, and according to the different propensities of these degrees of the different modes of material nature, we have different types of bodies. Like here it is said that 8.4 million species of life. So how this subtle body acts when it comes under the influence of the material modes. So what is the mind? The mind is the center of all activities. This is actually the material mind we are talking about. When we hear about sense objects, the mind generally becomes a reservoir for all ideas of sense gratification, as mentioned in Bhagavad Gita 3.40. Let me be the enjoyer, whereas the spiritual mind will think that I am, let me serve Krishna. The material intelligence, it influences the spirit soul to acquire the false ego and identify itself with matter, and thus with the mind and the senses. So this is how material intelligence acts. Intelligence, on the other hand, is supposed to direct the mind, according to Bhagavad Gita 6.34, rather than following the mind's dictations, So through spiritual intelligence, we keep our mind in check by reminding us that we are not the mind and we don't have to fall for its nonsense thoughts and ideas. But this material or the lusty intelligence, as mentioned in chapter 3 of Bhagavad Gita, will just follow the mind and the senses because it's fully contaminated. What is false ego? False ego is the sense that I am separate from Krishna, I have a separate interest, and that my business is the real business. The sense that I am independent, a completely autonomous identity. And what is contaminated consciousness? So when pure consciousness is polluted by material contamination, and when the identification of the body is prominent, one is said to be under the false ego, as mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam 3.26.14. So this contaminated consciousness, it gives rise to false ego. And then Srila Prabhupada very nicely explains and gives an analogy in this regard. When consciousness is mixed with material modes, it gets contaminated, just like water falling from the sky. It is crystal clear, distilled water. But as soon as it touches the earth, it becomes muddy. But that muddiness can be filtered. That filtering process is devotional service. This is from Room Conversation, July 6, 1976, Washington, D.C. And I have got about 3 examples to explain this, because sometimes people ask that the spirit soul it's fully spiritual, it's pure. How is it that it is able to identify or get contaminated under the influence of the material modes? So, for example, we are watching a movie and we like the hero of the movie. And when the hero is getting beaten up by the villains, we feel the pain. And when the hero is, on the other hand, beating the villains, then we feel happy. So the hero, the character of the hero on the screen is a separate entity. We are separate entity. But because we are identifying with that character, we feel the pain and the pleasure. So similarly, when we watch a tournament, say it's a cricket match or it's a soccer, rugby, whatever, and we have our favorite team. So when our favorite team loses, we feel the pain. And when our favorite team, wins, we feel happy. Why? Like I said, the team is separate. We are separate. And maybe we haven't even met the players, we don't know. But we are relating, we are identifying with the team. This is my country's team. So their pain and pleasure is my pain and pleasure. When they win, I am happy. When they lose, I am sad. So, but someone who's not interested in soccer, rugby, or cricket, or whatever, for him, that, it doesn't matter whether that team loses, that team wins, because he's not relating to that team. He won't feel anything, no pain, no pleasure. And there is another example by my Guru Maharaj. He always gives us this example that, for example, someone comes and hits your car and runs away. So you feel the pain because it's your car. You are relating to that car. But if it was a neighbor's car, the same car, if it was a neighbor's car, you won't feel anything because you're not identifying with that car. You're not relating to that car. So these are some of the examples we can understand how the spirit soul being spiritual and pure, but when it comes in contact, when it's covered by the material modes, how it is identifying with the material body. And in this connection, this material existence continues through the process of transmigration of the soul from one body to another. And in Bhagavad Gita 13.22, Purusha prakriti stohi bhungte prakriti jan gunan karanam guna sangosya sad asad yoni janmashu. Translation: the living entity in material nature thus follows the ways of life, enjoying the 3 modes of nature. This is due to his association with that material nature. Thus, he meets with good and evil among various species. So this transmigration in this purport is actually compared to the change of dress depending on the desires. And in relation to this, again, there is a verse from Bhagavad Gita 15.9. Shotram chakshu sparshanam cha rasanam grahanam evacha adhisthaya chayam vishayan upasevate. The living entity, thus taking another gross body, obtains a certain type of ear, eye, tongue, nose, sense of touch, which are grouped around the mind. He thus enjoys a particular set of sense objects. So according to the desire, he enjoys particular set of sense objects. For example, let me eat this way, let me sleep this way, let me have that, let me have this, etc. So these are all the desires of the living entity. And in this way, the living entity develops more desires. Therefore, in his next life, he gets a particular type of a tongue, a particular type of a ear, particular type of a taste. I can't see. A particular type of eyes, a particular type of ears, particular kind of a sense of touch. For example, someone having a mentality of a dog will get a dog's body in his next life. So he gets a particular set of sense organs which with corresponding sense objects. And as a result, the living entity is subjected to different types of so-called enjoyment, lamentation, fear, happiness, and unhappiness, as we have read in the translation. And the so-called enjoyment is different for different types of bodies. For example, a hog is eating stool is enjoyment, but for a demigod or for some human beings, it's a misery. For a demigod, on the other hand, watching the dance of the heavenly society girls is enjoyment. But a hog would not be interested. For him, it'll be like this lying in the stool is more happy and a comfortable place. So according to the different bodies, you have different happiness and different, yeah. And there is a pastime regarding this. Once Lord Indra, the king of heavenly planets, was cursed by Brahaspati to become a hog. He was going about on earth enjoying his hog body. When finally Lord Brahma came and told him, "My dear Indra, you have suffered enough. Now come with me and return to your heavenly kingdom." Indra, in the form of a hog, said, "Where shall I go?" "To the heavens," Lord Brahma replied. It was then that Indra said, "No, I have my family and children. How can I go? I'm very happy. Let me remain here." In this way, everyone is thinking that he is happy, although he is in a horrible and fearsome condition. However, one who is actually intelligent can understand that he is not actually happy, that he is suffering. It is said that ignorance is bliss, but this is the bliss of a hog. This is the narration of Srila Prabhupada from the teachings of Lord Kapil, and this story is from Srimad Bhagavatam 3.30.5. So we can see how strongly Maya covers the real identity of the living entity, that it does not want to quit its miserable body even for a better place. So why this covering is there? The living entity has the desire to enjoy that particular way. Thus, Krishna is actually helping us through the agency of Maya to fulfill our desires of so-called enjoyment. So as a result, the living entities, sometimes they go to the higher planets and sometimes they acquire lower bodies. This is all according to the idea of enjoying. The living entity gets bewildered and stuck in this material existence. So in this way, it does get stuck. Such changes of body account for varieties of enjoyment or suffering according to one's work in life. And in this way, we accrue karma and we get entangled, as mentioned in Bhagavad Gita 2.13. Not only the living entity gets enjoyment, but there is lamentation, fear, unhappiness. So all this comes in a package. Even the demigods, they go through these. They have to fight the demons. They even get thrown out of the heavenly planets. King Indra is always fearful of losing his throne. That's why he sends his apsaras to disturb the penances, so that he's always insecure of losing his throne. And when he does lose, he laments and he devises means to get it back. And he goes through a lot of anxiety. And then he runs to Lord Brahma to help him get back his heavenly kingdom. So this thing, this lamentation, bhayam, shokam, harsham, dukham, this is everywhere in all species of life. When he gets something that suits his sense gratification, he is happy. If he loses something, he is unhappy. And there is another example of King Chitraketu. Chitraketu, he was a king and he was very opulent, but he didn't have a son. So he had a strong desire to have a son. The rishis told him that this son will be named Harsha Shokam. So he will give you happiness and he will also give you lamentation. But at that time, King Chitraketu, I want a son, because the desire was so strong. He didn't think at that time that he didn't realize and understand how much lamentation he had to go through. So as long as we are in this material body, certain type of happiness, certain type of misery is inevitable. After many, many births and getting frustrated in our attempts to find happiness, we come to understand that this material world does not offer any real happiness. So after many, many births, bahunam janmanam ante, then we try to surrender to Krishna. We have nothing to do with this material nature. Our real relationship is with Krishna. That way we can restore our spiritual existence. So how can we do that? By always engaging in devotional service. Devotional, as mentioned in the purport, devotional service means always thinking of Krishna. Man manabhava madbhakto mam yaji mam namaskuru mam eveshyasi satyam te pratijane priyosime. Always think of me, become my devotee, worship me and offer your homage unto me. Thus you will come to me without fail. I promise you this because you are my very dear friend. And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada mentions that how we can engage all our senses in devotional service is it's through the medium of deity worship, Archana Marg. And in this regard, Srila Prabhupada says that if you want satisfaction for yourself, then you must practice this devotional service. Engage your eyes, engage your ears, engage your nose. Then the Archana Vidhi is to engage all senses in the service of the Lord. So by engaging our senses, our mind in the service of the Lord, we get purified. And this deity worship, it awakens attachment for Krishna, and it is one of the items of bhajana kriya. And then Srila Prabhupada says that by engaging in this service, so many unwanted things will vanish. This is from his lecture, Bhagavad Gita 7.1, 13 September 1972. And then Srila Prabhupada mentions that we have to constantly offer obeisances to the spiritual master and also to the deity. Means to be always thinking that I'm the servant of my spiritual master or I am the servant of the Lord. So the spiritual master can deliver his disciples from the blazing fire of material existence. As we sing in the Mangalarti prayers, Samsara Dava Nala Lidha Loka Tranaya Karunya Ghana Ghanatvam Praptasta Kalyana Guna Navasya Vande Guru Sri Charanaravindam. One needs to take shelter of the spiritual master, and by the grace of the spiritual master, one can cross the ocean of material existence. And the last verse of Guru Ashtakam, Yasya prasadat bhagavad prasado yasya prasadan nagati kutopi dhyayans tu vams tasya yashastri sandhyam vande guru shri charanaravindam. It is mentioned there that at least 3 times a day one should offer their obeisances unto the lotus feet of the spiritual master. And then again, Srila Prabhupada gives a nice, in this regard, he says that you have also mentioned to repeatedly offer obeisances to your spiritual master. This is very important. A disciple should offer dandavats, not namaskar. The more one becomes fixed up in Guru obeisances, the more he advances in spiritual progress. Yasya deve parabhaktir yatha deve tatha guru. Shvetashvatara Upanishad 6.23. So this is a letter that Srila Prabhupada wrote to Atreya Rishi on Bombay, November 15, 1974. In this regard, I'd just like to share a small experience and realization that when we go to the temple or even at home, when we offer our obeisances to our spiritual master, when we are in a rush, we just, with our gross body, we quickly just bow down and then we just get up. On the other hand, if we bow down fully with our heart and we, with full mind, we surrender our mind, we surrender our false ego. And when we meditate on the lotus feet of the spiritual master and we say the pranam mantra, you feel that there is a sense of like a load from the head coming off you. And then you feel there's a sense of relief when you actually meditate and you offer your mind, your false ego at the lotus feet of the spiritual master, and even offer it to the offer your obeisances to the deities, you feel light when you actually get up. At least at that moment, we are trying to surrender. So we give our full heart. But when we are in rush, we just offer quickly with our gross body, and then we just get up and we still feel the load on our head. I don't know, this is just my little experience. I thought I'll just share. And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada mentions about modern psychologists. So these psychologists, they can only study about the mind's action of thinking, feeling, and willing. They do not know the background of the mind. They do not know what is the mind all about. What is the process of mental activity, and what is it all about the material life, the activities of the subtle body, the transmigration. They have no idea about this. So they only see the mind of this lifetime and its dramas. And why modern psychologists cannot see it? Because they do not hear from liberated Acharya, as stated in Bhagavad Gita and as mentioned in the purport. Evam parampara praptam imam raja rishyo vidhu sa kale neha mahata yogo nashta parantapa. This supreme science was thus received through the chain of disciplic succession, and the saintly kings understood it in that way. But in course of time, the succession was broken, and therefore the science as it is appears to be lost. So by the grace of the spiritual master, who is in disciplic succession, one can see what is going on. For example, we cannot see how the mobile signals are traveling from one place to another, but it is happening. A qualified person can understand this. Just like we cannot see what is happening inside our body, but a qualified doctor who is trained can know and understand what is going on with the blood, the different organs, and the different parts of the body. Similarly, we have to understand through an authority, a liberated Acharya, the activities of the subtle body and the transmigration of the soul. On the other hand, the psychologist will say, something is wrong. Why are you depressed? Why are you frustrated? Let us help you to become happy. And what is their solution for happiness? To be happy enjoyer of this material world. But that is not the solution. But that doesn't work, because the so-called psychologists are themselves unhappy and depressed, although they may appear to be happy or peaceful or well-adjusted, but they are not happy. And they have no idea of what real happiness is. They have no clue how to stop the sufferings of this material existence. So going back to the purport, the conclusion of the purport is this. In this matters, we have to take the authorized statements of Bhagavad Gita. Dehinosmin yatha dehe Kaumaram yovanam jara tatha dehantara praptir dhiras tatra na muhyati. As the embodied soul continually passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. The self-realized soul is not bewildered by such a change. Unless all human society understands this important verse in Bhagavad Gita, civilization will advance in ignorance, not in knowledge. So this is the conclusion, that somehow or the other we have to distribute this transcendental knowledge to all human society so that they can also save themselves from this material existence, the sufferings of this material existence. So we have to continue to preach. We have a lot of work to do, and we have to just somehow engage in the preaching activities so that this human society um, can have access to the transcendental knowledge and save themselves. So with these words, I'd like to finish here. And if anybody would like to add any comment or share their realization, please feel free to do so. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam.
Danvat Pranam
So,
Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
such a wonderful explanation you have tabulated in such a nice way to make it easy understanding how the transmigration is working. The real attraction is here, what we see from Canto 3. We used to know that there are three parts of the shuttle body, which is mind, intelligence, and false ego. But the other component, which is actually hidden and missing, is that actually contaminated consciousness. And that contaminated consciousness can truly be understood. For an example, if we are in a mood, we go for we cooking in a mood, and the result. Secondly, if you are in a mood, go to the kitchen in a different consciousness. You see the result. The ultimate food is tasted different. Why this happens? Because of this consciousness. Consciousness is such a very important component of our this subtle body, which is actually unknown to us. But you have opened so nicely from the text of Lord Kapila's teaching. That is the whole point where this happiness and unhappiness uh, surrounding around. So this is very, very important to understand why this is happening. And this is being missed by the modern psychologists. Because they are themselves are not happy. So how can they provide happiness to others by counseling only? It's not possible. The real happiness is held by somebody else, which is the Supreme Lord. If we get connected with the Lord, then and only the happiness flows through. That's why it is said, by engaging in the devotional service, 634 and 1865, that is the only way how the flow. It is just a siphon process. The tank is at the top and your collective pot is the bottom. But there is no pipe. You can't draw the water from top to the bottom. So that pipe is nothing but the connection. That connection is needed. Once the connection is there, by the process of Manmana Bhava Madbhakta Madhyajima Namaskuru, the the happiness will automatically flow, and that is Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada is stressed throughout this text. That is how we understand the happiness. It is no other way to understand the happiness. It is the only way. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
enlightening this component. Is very, very important. Rest of the things we every time we read it, but this component is very, very important. Thank you so much. Hare
Thank you.
Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you so much. Anybody else would like to say anything?
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Mataji, I really like the examples you gave. It really kind of made it easy to relate. How when you see people playing a game and you know, those players are different from you, you have nothing to do with them, but because you're relating to them, you get affected by their winning or losing. So I really like that example. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Anybody else?
Hare Krishna, Ratnalekha,
Hare
Mataji.
Krishna, Mataji.
Very nice explanation with nice flow. You are giving nice examples. Yeah, I like it.
Thank
All the examples. Thank you. Hare
you so
Krishna.
much. Hare Krishna. Anybody else would like to share any realization?
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. Thank you very
Dandavat
much for the very
Pranam.
nice left giving the example. And I was really very influenced, as Shibha Mataji has just told. The when we are relating with oneself, we are getting engaged in this way. And I am just remembering another example. Someone I heard from another acharya was like that. The father going with a child to a toy shop. Both of them are seeing the toys, but the child is so overwhelmed and so much attached to all the items. He wants, Dad, I want this, I want this, I want this. But his father is doing everything. He has seen everything, but he's not attached. He's telling, okay, what about that? He's inquiring about the things. What is that car? What it gives? He want to know, evaluating without being attached. What would be good for his son? But the son is so much attached. Whatever he sees, I want this, I want this. So in this way, when we get attached to the things, we lose our sense of judgment. And we get so much involved that what is our duty and what is our responsibility, forget that. And try to act in that way. In case of the child, he is getting engaged so much, but the father is reluctant. And ultimately, father will pay, and what is good for him, he will give him. But he is unattached. And similarly, the Lord is also helping us to get unattached from this material world. And he is observing our actions, and he will help us ultimately. And so it is our duty to follow what the Father is, in this particular example, the Father is doing. And in the same way, if we move or shift our attachment to the Lord, that he will find the best thing for us. By getting engaged with the material things, we are losing our time, energy of this short life, and getting diverted to another thing. So when we attach our things to the Lord, everything is set aside. The clear path is envisioned for us, and we can follow it very nicely. So this is the beauty of Krishna consciousness. When we are Krishna conscious, we have the right path. And those of us who has understood it, it is our duty to preach it to the others. You have also very nicely explained it. Thank you very much for the nice class.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for nicely explaining these examples. Thank you so much. Anybody else would like to share? If not,
Mataji, it appears there's no other person to make comment. If any other person, he can make. Otherwise, probably the class
we
may be
can.
concluded.
Yeah, we can stop here, Prabhuji. So,
Yascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha
पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो
Vaishnavebhyo
नमः
namo
अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद
Vaishnavrinda
की
ki
जय
jai.
आर ग्रेस रत्नलेखा देवी दासी की जय शिला
Mataji ki jai.
प्रभुपाद की जय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल ऑल ग्लोरीज टू assembled devotees